Welcome back to yet another disc golf preview show of the Chess.com Invitational. We're in a new home, the Grip Lock channel. We're officially calling this the Grip Lock preview show, and it's a new season.
It is.
Disc golf's back. Starting tomorrow, the Chess.com Invitational kicks off the Disc Golf Pro Tour season for 2024. It's good to be back.
It is. I feel like a lot of times the off season seems really brief. I don't necessarily feel that way this year. I feel like if I think about it in terms of like USDGC, it does feel like, oh, that was yesterday. But if you think about all the things that have transpired over the offseason, all the podcast episodes we did, it has been a while. And it's been a while since like we've watched live disc golf, and I'm really, really excited about it. I think every year, like my life gets more and more invested in the pro disc golf scene, and it gets better and better. So each time it goes away, I get more excited for it to come back because I realize how much I miss it.
Yeah, I am very excited for this weekend. Very excited to watch live disc golf. Also excited to consume the new Jomez product, which will be seemingly closer to live disc golf in the way that it's going to be consumed. But I'm just excited for disc golf to be back. We're headed to Olympus, the brand new course to the Pro Tour. We saw it some during the All-Star event. They played kind of a safari 9-hole loop layout, but where we've really seen this previously is at Throwdown the Mountain. I think it was called Grand Canyon back then, if I'm not mistaken. But it's a brand new course to the tour. It's not really a wooded course, but woods come into play a lot. It is a technical course.
Yeah.
And I'm excited to see it. We have some stats courtesy of Edwin. So we'll get into Edwin's stats on this course. It's a 10,281-foot course out here. Par breakdown, it is 56% par 4s, 6% par 5s, 39% par 3s. But when you compare this to other technical courses on tour, the one key stat here is the par 3s are 12% longer than typical par 3s that we see on courses that are similar. Par 4s and par 5s are pretty similar average distance-wise. When we're also looking at this course, the birdie rates, this course seems to play harder, particularly with par 3s. Makes sense because they're longer. But it looks like the total average birdie rate is about 6% harder than what we see on tour. And the average winning score that we've seen at Throwdown the Mountain, which is typically 3 rounds, that's what we're about to see this weekend, is 29 under par, has been kind of the average across those 3 rounds. So averaging just under 10 under per round, which on the Pro Tour, that's a tough course.
Yeah.
The best round that we've seen out here, again, this is all at Throwdown the Mountain. We don't have any historic Pro Tour data, but the best round we've ever seen out here was from Paul McBeth, 2019 round 3. He popped off a 14 under par. Yeah. Very hot. And the best event, that was a part of the best event we've seen out here, which is also by Paul McBeth at 39 under, skewing that finishing average a little bit, being 10 strokes above it or below it, depending on how you look at that. But all in all, I've watched some course previews. I watched the All-Star event. This looks like a really fun track, a lot of elevation changes. It looks like it still has to kind of wear in a little bit. You can tell they're still working on the course, so it's not like a perfectly manicured final product, but the design of the course is great. I think it'll really challenge the top pros. We get to see shots that we don't get to see a lot of other places. It's a different vibe than a lot of the rest of the tour. And the tour is starting in Florida, which is something that we've been advocates for a long time. So all around, very excited for this course.
I think it looks really good. I think that this course has done a really good job of keeping the viewer and the player interested. It gives you a variety of shots. It's not super repetitive. It asks for demanding shots, but also shots that make sense for disc golf as well. And it just really stretches that boundary. But yeah, it just looks like a lot of fun. I do think that it's going to play extremely difficult. Obviously, the latest preview we had of that was during the All-Star events. It was a monsoon. So that's something to keep track of. But you could see, you could still get a decent idea. And I can tell you that back nine has a lot of teeth. It's super long. So many par 4s. We kind of know Paul McBeth is kind of one of the pioneers for more par 4 heavy courses. We've seen that in a lot of his designs, and I think that this is reflected on this course. There's a lot of par 4s, especially on that back nine. I think like 6 or 7 of the holes are par 4s, and par 4s are greater, that is. And yeah, I think it's going to be very challenging. It's weird because it does, Edwin kind of compared it to technical courses, and, you see all the obstacles in the OB and you do kind of think technical, but it's really going to it's going to take distance throwers. Yeah. Because when you see that par 3 average, par 4s and par 5s, anytime you have enough obstacles and OBs, par fours and par fives can play tough and create a lot of separation just because of the fact that you have to throw multiple shots and avoid obstacles. Because another thing to mention about this course is you have a lot of tricky greens, whether it's the approach and just the uphill nature or just sloped greens and just the rough terrain in some areas. But I think what can make a disc golf course the hardest to score is just long par threes consistently, because every time, if you have a difficult course and those players get to the par three and they can see the basket in front of them, but they're just really tough to reach, that can be really frustrating and wear down a player. And I think you saw long stretches during that All-Star period where people just weren't scoring. I think one of the things of this course is to be like, can people score out there? And I think the rain maybe not being a factor this weekend, which it looks like it won't be nearly the factor, especially as we get into the weekend, that'll help. But, you know, I think immediately like circle two putting could be big because you're not going to park baskets on this course like you would others.
No, putting's definitely going to be crucial. The courses that Edwin was directly comparing this to is Nevin, Brewster's, W.R. Jackson, and Northwoods Black, which again, a lot of those are really heavily wooded tracks. And so it's from a viewer standpoint, that's why I'm excited about this course. From a viewer standpoint, it doesn't give you that feel. It doesn't give you the like super tight wooded feel. But play style, I agree.
It does have trouble though.
Yeah,
you can get into nasty stuff.
Yeah, like there's those. I forget. I think are they pampas bushes? Or whatever they're in Florida.
You see Gannon in them like he's swallowed by him, and he's like 6'5".
But it's a little bit more easy on the eyes than if a player is just like deep in the woods scrambling, but it provides that same feel.
Well, and guys, the biggest difference I think between like a Northwoods is, it's Northwood.
I always add the S.
Northwood.
Where did that come from? Why does everyone add the S?
Because it flows better.
Okay.
Northwood and Northwoods, yeah, I don't know. The big difference is getting off of the tee just initially. I think that a lot of the trouble on this course is going to come out when that disc is halfway, 3/4, all the way down the fairway, whereas some of these other tight wooded courses, the ones that people would consider the technical courses of the tour, you're trying to hit that first available gap.
Yeah.
And I like a course where the disc gets off. I think that there is something to be said about the guys who can go out there and hit those initial type gaps, but it can provide some interesting golf to watch when you see guys hitting trees really early.
Yes.
I like to see the disc fly. I think the viewers too. And I think that watching this course back, there's a really good mixture of, letting guys get off the tee, but still, the accuracy is still there, because you could have an easy initial gap, but have the hole still be tight the rest of the way. And like the landing zone can still be just as small. It's not like we're playing on giant golf style fairways. There's still precise things. And there's a lot of different angles that guys are going to have to throw on as well. Anytime you're adding elevation, you add that factor of like having to match slopes.
Yep.
So I think it is going to be very, very fun to watch, and not, it's kind of unique, which I do like. We see, okay, are we playing a golf course this week, or are we playing tight woods? This really does fit somewhere in between, and I like to see more courses like that.
Yeah. Now, we've been talking about a lot of what we're going to be watching this weekend, and I think one question that has to be brought up, can we actually watch it? DGN, they switched this offseason to new service provider. I believe it's called Insys, and it's hosted by AWS.
60 frames a second, huh?
60 frames a second was a big pushing thing. Those frames do have to come through for that to matter.
Yeah. How much time are we going to get 60 frames?
Yeah. Now, I'll say, I can only speak from personal experience.
Yeah.
All-Star weekend.
It was fine.
Went good for me.
Yeah, in the pouring rain, and it was okay.
Yeah, it was. I had some trouble Saturday morning, but I think that was more they had the stream scheduled for 9:30, and I thought it was supposed to go live at 8:30. And by I thought, I mean they were promoting everywhere it was going live at 8:30. Once 9:30 came around, it was in the middle of the round, but it worked fine from there on out. And I didn't have any problems with the rest of that FPO round, any of the MPO round, any of the single stuff on Sunday. So it's hard for me because I didn't get to experience the frustration I'm seeing everywhere on social media, but you're seeing it everywhere on social media. We're seeing some people who are claiming that when they reached out to DGN, the response they got back was basically their TV's too old if they didn't buy it in the last 4 years. Not a great look. I think
you're better off just being like, we're working on it.
Yeah,
like,
the big frustrating point that I saw from a lot of people is it used to work last year, and now it's incompatible. It's not coming through. It's not whatever. It's not compatible with my TV anymore. And sure, you can watch it on a laptop and plug a HDMI cord in. But if that was the process it's always been, fine. But when something did work and then doesn't, and some people had paid yearly in like, let's say June, so they've already paid for these 6 months, and now it's just been removed from their TV. Very frustrating. The DGN has a little bit of an uphill battle, I think. And, like we had said, the All-Star Weekend, in my opinion, is just their test. I think it's where they try to work a bunch of kinks out. Hopefully, they worked them out, and starting tomorrow, DGN won't be a storyline going to the next event.
Yeah, it needs to not be. And we talked about this when they parted ways with UDisc was when it really sparked it. But anytime you are taking away something that was working and implementing a new thing, like there is that sense of like, okay, we're taking a step back to try and get better in the long term or try and improve our business strategy in the long term. And that's fine. Just know that your heat is going to be doubled.
Yeah.
Right. Like people would be mad if this was a new product. People are going to be more mad because it's a new product replacing one that worked. And DGN and UDisc and all that had kind of settled into a place where, and it's like anything, change just sparks debate.
Yeah.
The Disc Golf Network was not perfect last year, but it had gotten to a point where people knew what to expect and it was fine and it was worth their money in their minds. And so everybody had kind of stopped talking about it. And now it's just kind of back in the news cycle again. I do think they're going to figure it out. I hope they will. I mean, I can tell you, if I try to watch it on my TV this year and it doesn't work for some reason on either, because I have a Roku TV and I have an Apple TV. If on either of those TVs I have issues, I'm going to be mad.
Yeah. So we just bought a new TV for the office.
We got an Amazon. We're going to have all the...
I noticed it comes with like the Amazon Fire Stick, but not a Fire Stick. You know what I'm saying? It's built in. So my house, I have a Roku in one room and I have Google.
So we got across all of us, we have every test there
Google
is.
worked great this weekend. Okay. Roku worked great this past weekend. That was my two TVs.
I was watching on my phone, so I don't know if my Apple works. So.
But when I was like seeing all of this, I was looking at this TV because it's in the box. It's for when we move into a new space. And I was like looking at our TV and I'm like, I really hope it works. Like that wasn't even a factor in our heads because we bought it thinking everything's going to work.
The irony is that the new system's supposed to be powered by AWS, which is like an Amazon company. And I think that they probably threw that name in there more than they needed to just because they liked how it sounded, but it'd be really funny if the Amazon TV didn't work.
I did see some people complaining their Fire Sticks weren't working. Now, is it just it's old? Who knows? Yeah. But regardless, could be a big storyline. Hopefully it's not a big storyline this weekend. I have a feeling it will be, unfortunately.
I'm sure it will.
Let's get into some other storylines here. First off, one of the biggest storylines, I think, we have Paul McBeth playing this event, owner of the course alongside Dylan Cease. And the big thing
literally and metaphorically owner of the course.
Yes, because he is 5 for 5 winning here with Throw Down the Mountain. He's won 5 times with his 5 appearances.
Yeah.
All signs would point he's the favorite, but we have the question of his shoulder.
Yeah.
He got the stem cell shots. There hasn't been much update other than we knew he was going to play regardless.
Yeah.
And it's just like, is this going to be a Paul that is at 100%? He's ready to rock and roll. Is this going to be a Paul that doesn't really trust his shoulder, even though he could? Or is this going to be a Paul that is just injured?
Right.
And we don't quite know what we're going to get.
So much uncertainty.
What are we expecting?
I don't know. I honestly, I'm trying not to dial up my expectations too much until I'm sure, as long as the press conference does its job, they're going to ask him about it first question. So hopefully, I'm assuming we're getting a press conference today.
I would imagine. Yeah. By the time this comes out, and people are probably already know the answer. Know.
But, I'm typically not the one to argue with Paul McBeth's streaks. For years and years and years, it was like the world streak, right? Top 2 at Worlds every year. And it was like, no matter what was going on with Paul, you could never bet against that streak. But that kind of ended a little last year with this injury. We saw it happen at the end of the year with Worlds. So I am not really willing to jump back onto the train, even though this is another one of those, like, it's kind of written in the stars. He, is the owner of the course. I'm sure he's been out there a ton. And that is always, I'm not questioning Paul from his playing ability if he's healthy, because his course knowledge is going to be on par with anybody's out there. And, we know he can win at this course, essentially. But the injury worries me. We've seen some woes last year. So I'm not going to be, it's like we say all the time, not going to be shocked if he plays really well. I'm not going to be shocked if he wins. But I'm not going to anticipate it.
As a Paul McBeth fan, what's a win this weekend? Like, what's a win for Paul?
A win is just seeing him play well and finish top 10. Like, I think at a court, like looking healthy. I think a win honestly might be. A win could be if he finishes top 20, has a couple rounds, maybe even just one round where he does really well, and he gets out of the tournament and says, I felt really good. My arm felt great. I'm ready to rock. Because then at least going forward, you can be like, okay, he's fine, right? Like that's really the win. Whenever you're rooting for an injured player, You want to see them play well, but ultimately you want to see them come out of the tournament and be like, yeah, I feel healthy still. I'm good moving forward. I think this injury is solved. So like that's the big win. But if he's healthy, it wouldn't be unreasonable to expect him to finish top 15, top 10.
Yeah, in my head, top 10 was the line I had of like, if Paul's in the top 10, I think that this weekend's a win.
I think it'd be
like,
a great sign.
Imagine with the caveat that he's walking out as he came in. Like
right.
He's still healthy.
Yeah, say if he's top 10, if he finishes 9th, but then he's like, I got destroyed out there.
Chewed up by a dog out there, yeah.
Because, one of the things we have to consider, and we've kind of talked about, is like, he wants to play this tournament so bad. So I believe he would play this tournament at 75%.
Yeah.
So we don't know where he's at.
Yeah. But no, I think even if he does some mistrust with his shoulder, his confidence at this course, I think, can carry him to a top 10, even if he's not at 100%. If he's at 100%, his putt's on, which I think is going to be a crucial one for Paul this year. If his putt's on, then yeah, he could easily walk away with this thing, but he could also easily
and it's just not a
DNF or finish outside the top 50.
It's not a chip and putt.
No.
You got to rip shots out there, a lot of different angles, a lot of like uphill, downhill, Anheuser-Heiser. Like he's going to test his arm.
Yeah.
So.
Now, the next player who's also played this event 5 times, Calvin Heimberg, his best finish out here is 2nd, but he's come in the top 5 each time he's played out here. With last season, Calvin is probably most people's favorite coming into this event.
Yeah.
Where are you feeling with Calvin?
Yeah, I think he's kind of an obvious favorite. I think he will be an obvious favorite for most of the season like he was last year. If we know anything about Calvin, early season wins kind of do typically happen with him. Home state, I'm sure he knows the course very well. Obviously, he's played there a number of times. I think, he hasn't won, but that's because he was running into Paul. I would expect great things from him. This, we say what you want to say about Calvin with like when he plays in majors, doubting him, but like in a season opener event in his home state at a course that he has a successful track record at, you got to think he's going to play really well.
Yeah, I think that.
And he did fine during the All-Star event.
Calvin deserves all of he's the favorite coming into this event.
Yeah.
Looking at some stats, he led Circle 1 green in regulation and was 2nd in birdie rate for technical holes in 2023. Again, we're considering this a technical course. So statistic-wise, just say by the course he should play good, but then he's also proven that he can play good on this course. Mm-hmm. And the style it feels like a Calvin style course.
It does.
It asks for a lot of shots that when I see them, I feel like they're shots that you almost expect Calvin to execute regularly. So I definitely expect him to perform very well out here. And like you said, he typically comes out the gates pretty hot, especially last year, came out the gates very hot. So that would all signs would point to Calvin should be the favorite this weekend, and Calvin should be the guy to beat out there. Another player that I think somehow is still sneaking under a lot of players' radar who shouldn't be, I think it's his demeanor, to be honest with you, is Kyle Klein. Mm-hmm. He played well at the All-Star event. Obviously, you got to take that with a grain of salt because of the weather out there. But Kyle, if I were in Kyle's shoes, obviously we don't know this from Kyle, and I don't think Kyle's the type of guy who would ever say it, but if I were in Kyle's shoes, I'm coming into the season with a chip on my shoulder because of all the fanfare around the new face of Discmania, and it's not me. I wouldn't like that. I'm the reigning U.S. champion. I haven't gone anywhere. I got my name on discs. Yeah, I have some notoriety. But I feel like they're handing, and it's not necessarily Discmania, it's more the public perception is handing the throne of Discmania to a king that I feel that Kyle Klein could dethrone.
I think it's somewhat Discmania as well. But
yes.
I think if you're Discmania, honestly, this can go a number of ways. It can create negative feelings from Kyle Klein, but it also, what you can create is internal rivalry, which is actually, and I don't think they dislike each other, but it's not difficult to assume that Kyle Klein has a little bit of chip on his shoulder, might be thinking like, hey, I want to prove this season that like I am better than Gannon Burr. Like I am this top level player too. I should be getting the recognition and praise. And if you're Discmania, that's something you love. You love to have guys, having healthy competition within your team to kind of push each other forward. And I think Kyle Klein he just kind of plays quiet.
He kind of is quiet.
He is just kind of quiet. Yeah. He's a super talented player. I think he got pushed really heavy to the forefront of disc golf when he first kind of broke out. Everybody kind of got their eyes on him, was like, oh, yeah, there's Kyle Klein. And then kind of like the personality didn't grab as many people. I think a lot of time in disc golf, you get shoved to the forefront, like you might get your chance. You know, I think a player that kind of reminds me of this is like an Ezra Aderhold or an Aaron Gossage. Like these guys get shoved to the forefront, and then some of them have this personality where they're able to capture a lot of fans. Ezra Aderhold was able to do that, I think. I think he got pushed to the forefront of disc golf when he wasn't even playing his best disc golf, captured a ton of fans, and now he has a pretty good fan base. I think that's something that's happened to Aaron Gossage like right now. And I think Kyle Klein was one of those guys where he was brought to the forefront of disc golf. You know, people like Kyle Klein. He's a likable guy, but didn't really set the world on fire. And that's fine. You know, that's just kind of the nature of the player he is. But I think that's why he kind of lurks in the shadows a little bit. But he's super dangerous out there. And he can win any event.
I view him as Calvin Heimberg a few years ago.
Yeah. Totally.
Calvin was... I think Kyle Klein's a sleeping giant.
Yeah.
Where I think Calvin was kind of in a similar shoe where he could win any event he stepped on the course of. He could be dominant at times, but he didn't have that spark, that personality, and so he just went untalked about for no reason until he kept putting his own name in your mouth by his performance that you didn't have a choice, and then his personality started to loosen up. Personality came through more in some of the Jomez practice rounds, and now he is, reaping the benefits of a giant fan
And
base.
people forget, Calvin Heimberg, I think, turns 28 this year. Like, he's no spring chicken anymore. He's still young, but, like, it's taken time. Only, like, 2 years ago did he really start becoming that, like, he's top 3 every week guy. So Kyle Klein's just starting to approach that age now. I think he's my age. So, like, I guess I am getting old. But he is he's just starting to get into that time in his career where we would more expect him to be entering his prime. And, he just won a major. Yeah. So it's like... I think he's an underappreciated guy.
For sure. Now, the player that we've kind of been talking about in tandem with Kyle Klein, Gannon Buhr, this is his debut official event with the new Discmania bag. How are we expecting him to perform out there?
I think fine. I watched a lot of his All-Star highlights, and, his game isn't really going to change. He's still throwing flex shots all over the place. I think that's a shot that's actually quite effective at this course. There's a number of shots where you're messing with right OB and you need to kind of get the disc. I remember there's one hole in particular. I don't remember which number, but it was Rick and who else was it?
Rick and fence on the right.
Yeah, it was Rick and Calvin both just tried. They were all trying to throw this flex shot, and Rick and Calvin both just burned it out of bounds right. And Gannon was the only one who was able to adjust in it and get that flex shot in bounds, which. Talk about 2 other guys who are great at that shot and couldn't execute it. But it seemed like he's already found discs he can trust. That's not shocking. He's addicted to disc golf. He plays a ton. I'm sure he's learned his bag super well. And I know Gannon's the type of guy who, like, changing manufacturers for him was probably very exciting and very, like, he probably loved getting out there and throwing 100 discs. So I expect him not to really have any hiccups this year. I would say the one thing that's really hard to train when you're somebody like Gannon and you throw a lot of flex shots and your go-to shot is like, I'm leaning on a disc. That isn't super difficult to find. He's already throwing discs like the splice. You know what that disc is going to do.
Yeah.
A lot of times you have guys who throw more of the touchy hyzer flip shots a lot. Like, it can be hard for them to replace certain discs, but what he does, one thing that you can't just instantly replace a lot of times is the putter. When you take as many reps with one putter for so long, there's going to be an adjustment period, especially when you throw putts the way he does with so much force. So I'll be curious to see how the putter does for him.
Yeah.
That's something to watch.
No, for sure. I'm expecting him to perform well. Because, I mean, the putter, there's definitely, in my opinion, there would be some, I guess uncertainty would be the right word, but just... You're so confident with PA3s. You putt with them since you're a little kid, and now you're like, he's getting close to 18, and out of nowhere you switch from the putter that you basically learned to play disc golf with, more or less. There's always that. It's always that, like, uncertainty, but as soon as you get into the first event, if he cashes a few big putts early, that's out the window. Then confidence is just there. Yeah. It doesn't take much for... Now, it takes for a season-long confidence, it's a different thing, but for an event confidence, I think it just takes a few putts. Yeah. And honestly, we saw Chris Dickerson was a guy that was with Prodigy throwing more of the hyzer flip style golf. We saw him struggle somewhat, transition to Discraft, I think because he had those trusty, reliable. To be honest with you, I think Discmania's lineup matches an Anti-Flex better than Prodigy's lineup. to where almost the discs he's moving to, I think, will suit Gannon's game better.
He's got more options for sure.
Yeah, so it'll definitely be interesting to see how he performs. I'm not expecting there to be an adjustment period. I think he can come out, and it would not surprise me if he came out and won this event.
When you've got really talented throwers of the disc, I think you're going to see actually more times than not that there isn't an adjustment period. I mean, we saw Simon come out with gyro and win right away.
Yeah.
When you're that good at throwing the disc, and like Simon, we saw him spend forever with a different company and then go to a really extreme move, and it didn't really matter. So, if
you're good, you're good.
You're good. And sometimes there'll be a little bit of hiccups, especially if you lean on the same disc for a long time. But a lot of people are just not going to have that adjustment period. Disc golf discs are disc golf discs.
Now, at this point in the sport, we could literally talk about another 20 players that all have an actual chance up here. But I'm going to just ask you for one more. Who else are you excited to watch out here this weekend?
I think another player that comes to mind that we've been kind of tracking, and this I might be stealing your thunder because you've been talking about a lot too, is Ezra Robinson. Another guy who did pretty well in the All-Star event. I think he is just like, and we're basically turning him into a non-sleeper because we keep calling him a sleeper at this point. But I'm really just excited to watch him this year. Him and Gossage are two guys that if they can putt this year, well, there's a number of people in this list, but those are two big ones because you could add AB in there as well. But if him and Gossage can figure out how to putt this year, they're going to be just unstoppable. Like they are throwing the disc so well and so confidently that I'm excited to see how they play.
I'm excited. The player on my list is actually his brother, Isaac Robinson.
Yeah.
Mainly because when we're talking technical courses, he's got to be the first one on your mind. And so looking at this as a technical course with the stats, I really want to see what is Isaac Robinson going to bring to the table this year. Yeah. He has a bunch of signature discs dropping today, actually, foundationdisc.com. You can check them out. There's some absolutely sick ones. But he's got, he is now, last year, obviously he won 2 majors, but he was still kind of like stepping into the role. With the departure of Gannon, he is prodigy.
Yeah.
So this is his first event as there's no longer I'm stepping into a role. I now have expectations to perform because I am the guy now. This is the first event where that's the role he plays. He seems to be loose. He seems to be laid back. It doesn't seem like it's something that's going to bother him. But I feel like this is a course that could line up well for his game. And I think it'll be interesting to see. The stats, Edwin's stats points to Paul Kranz being a sleeper pick out here with his previous performance at technical courses. Only thing to keep in mind there is he did recently switch to MVP. Sure. So that is just something to keep in mind. But, Rookie of the Year last year for a good reason. I think he's still eligible to be DGPT Rookie of the Year this year.
Who knows?
Which, who knows how that'll work out. But that's what the statistics are pointing to as a sleeper pick. We're actually going to throw it over to Joe Henderson now for our preview and storylines of FPO.
Hello, everyone, and welcome in. My name is Joe Henderson, and I'm going to be covering everything you need to know from the FPO side of things for the Chess.com Invitational in Brooksville, Florida. Today, we're going to be covering some of the notable names that are missing from this event, as well as some of the bigger storylines that I think that you should keep an eye out for as you're watching. As of now, we have 44 registered FPO for this event. There was one name that I noticed that stood out that was not on the PDGA registration link, and that was Kristen Tatar, our current world champion. And I think Kristen is just going to be spending some extra time at home with her family and loved ones just before she makes the big trek over to the States. And I think her first event will be Waco. Some of the bigger storylines that I think that you should be paying attention to this week are that the Europeans, minus Kristen Tatar, are back. So we have Hannah Blomroos, we have Luca Lorenzen, and we also have Evelina Salonen back on the course. And these women have been putting in the work on the off season. I've been watching Luca for sure in the gym, and then Evelina and Hannah have been showing some stories and some posts about them putting and doing some indoor training as well. Last year, we noticed that Evelina and Hannah were definitely on the up with their putt. I know at the beginning of the season last year, it was a little bit of a struggle for them. But from what I've noticed from the stats of last year, at the very end, they were trending upwards. So I'm really excited to see how they will play on this course. And they both have that fairway game down, and I'm excited to see what they can do. If they can get it close to the basket, I'm sure that they'll be close to the top of the leaderboard. Next up, another person that you should keep an eye out for is Ellie Ezra Middling. I know we all just saw her at the All-Stars event, as well as the PDGA World Championships distance competition, but oh my goodness, she can throw so far. Ellie Ezra is only 16 years old, and she's already outthrowing the whole entire field. From my point of view, I think that this course, because there's some longer holes and longer distances, there's some eagles and some birdies out there that she could definitely take advantage of if her accuracy game is honed in and her putting is on point. She is newly sponsored by DGA. Honestly, I'm very excited to see how this plastic is working out for her, because from the distance competition at the All-Stars event, wow, I think she's figured it out. So I'm very excited to see how she plays the rest of the course. The last name that you should be watching out for this week is the one and the only Paige Pierce. This will be Paige's first event back after she broke her ankle in mid-July of 2023 at the PCS Sula Open. From her Instagram posts and her reels on Instagram, I've noticed that her distance is coming back for sure. And also I've heard that her putting is doing really well. She was just on a couple of podcasts recently. It sounds like her putting is feeling really, really good, and her distance is back up to like around 370 to 400 feet, which in the FPO field, I think that she can get away with quite a bit there. If you're looking at like Owen Scoggins or someone like that, like Owen has won Disc Golf Pro Tour events, and she's not even known for distance. She's just an incredible putter and super, super accurate. So if Paige can keep it in the fairway, I think that she has a really good chance this weekend. These are my takes for the week, and I'd love to know yours too. And we're going to throw it back to the guys.
All right. Appreciate Joe with all those storylines. We're excited to have her be a part of the crew this year, breaking down FPO. And the one point I want to hammer home is the Paige Pierce.
Yeah.
There is still just I'll call it a shroud of uncertainty around what Paige are we about to see. Because returning from an injury like this, obviously she's been playing disc golf. Obviously she feels ready to come back. But returning from an injury like this, there is just so many question marks, because like you have to trust your leg.
Yeah.
And earning that trust back, because if you're throwing timid, especially on a course like this, it's shorter for FPO. I think it's 2 strokes easier par-wise for FPO players, but it's still a demanding course out there. It still is asking a lot of distance, a lot of accuracy. And, for Paige, that is really going to be a big question of, like, this could be a really, like, if she comes out here and she trusts her leg and she is able to perform at the level that Paige Pierce is capable of, I think I like it for her that Kristen Tatar is not in the field this week. I like that for her, where she doesn't have to perform to the level that you might have to come Waco to win out here.
Right.
And I think if she's able to get herself into contention or get a win, that could be some really good momentum and really good confidence on that leg heading into Waco when the beast comes back.
Yeah, it probably is good not to have that as a focus point, because I think if she's entering an event with Kristen, like that's all you're really thinking about a lot of times. I agree. I think it's gonna be really interesting to watch. Really brutal, tough injury to recover from. She's not super young anymore. Like, it's going to be difficult to trust that leg again and get that confidence back. And it's just been a while since we've seen Paige firing on all cylinders anyways. So I really don't know what to expect from her. I'm rooting for her at this point, and when it comes to the FPO field, I just want to see a lot of people playing well, because, it makes it more exciting when people are on the top of their game. We haven't seen anybody... the last person we saw as dominant and commanding in the FPO field as Kristen was Paige. So that's just what we're looking for again. And there's definitely young talent that can emerge around that field. But I'd love to see Paige squeeze the last good few years out of her career and really get back on top of her game. The other name that she mentioned that I think is really interesting to watch this year is Ellie Ezra. I think that... First of all, awesome name. I think that she is a super interesting young talent to look at. Somebody that first came on my radar during Throw Pink last year. I think she finished 10th in that event. A lot of people are talking about her distance. I think she's just a young talent and kind of the next name to throw into that hat of like hey, maybe she can become the one to kind of make a challenge towards the top of that leaderboard. So, yeah.
Yeah, a lot to pay attention to. That's all the storylines we have for this week. Let's get into some predictions. Reminder on how these points work. Essentially, you get 1 point for picking someone in the top 3 if you have them in the wrong spot in the top 3. 3 points if they're in the right spot in the top 3. And then whoever wins the quote-unquote dark horse pick gets 2 points. That is someone who is outside the top 30 in the world rankings. For this episode, we're using the Statmando official world rankings. Going forward, we will switch to the brand new PDGA official Disc Golf World Rankings.
Powered by PDGA Live.
mainly because it has the word official in it. And I'm finally like, oh, that's the official world rankings.
They love that. They love it.
Yeah. So, but I mean, with PDJ Live being the live scoring, which who knows what we're going to see from that this weekend. It was pretty good during All-Star weekend.
It was.
It makes sense for that also to be the world rankings that we use going forward. But that's how all of that will work out. Let's kick it off with MPO. I'll give my picks first. Coming in third place, I have Gannon Burr. I think that he has potential to get up there. I don't want to lock him in as a winner, but I do think if he's in the top 3, he's pushing for the win.
Okay.
But I want him in my top 3 just in case he's there. Isaac Robinson, similar story, but I'm putting him in second because I think that he also can perform very well out here. But the guy I got to go with who I think is going to take this down is Calvin Heimberg.
Yeah, that makes sense. My top 3, I've got some different names. I've got AB in third.
Okay.
I'm rating this pretty heavily as throwers course. I'm kind of dying on that hill with my predictions. Now, just about anybody we'd pick can win on any course, but I'm kind of taking that angle. So I'm going AB in third. I'm going to take Aaron Gossage in second. I think his forehand is going to be really useful. We saw that a few times during the All-Star weekend. Really hard not to bias our picks off of what we saw during All-Star just because, A, those are the best players, and B, we've seen it now. So, I'm going to go with Gossage in second, and then I'm going to also take Calvin to win. I think that is the no-brainer. Doesn't mean he will win, but he certainly has the best chance.
That makes sense, and it seems like Joe was on a similar wavelength to us as she also picked Calvin Heimberg to win. She also picked Isaac Robinson to come in second, but the player for third, which I think is a great pick, we kind of slept on a little bit, is Simon Lizotte.
Yeah, I think he can. Simon is somebody who can have a slower start sometimes to the tour, but he does get a lot of his wins early in the season a lot of times. I feel like it just takes him a couple events to get started. But hey, you never know. I do think Isaac, I like Isaac as a player, and I like him in any event. I wasn't completely sold on him at this course just because of the distance it demanded. And I know that's kind of a dumb take sometimes with his game, but I don't know. It didn't quite match up for me. And I liked guys who had a forehand. And I know Isaac's been working on it. Hey, I really hope he brings the forehand out this year because I saw him posting about it. It looked pretty good. We'll see if he trusts it, though.
It'll be interesting to see. Now, over on FPO, we'll kick it off with Joe's picks. She has Holland Handley taking it down. She has Ella Hansen in second, and she snuck Paige Pierce into that third-place spot. What do you got, Trev?
Throwing Paige in there. I went with the Triple H.
Okay.
Triple H today. Haley King in third, Henna Blomroos in second, and Holland Handley in first.
I was looking at Henna and Evelina, really thinking about it.
I like the throwers.
It being a throwers course, but as we mentioned early in the show, I think you're going to have a lot of kind of like outside putting looks, and I think that it's going to end up being more of a putter's course than we think. Because I think
it always ends up that way.
Yeah.
Here's the thing: every course is a putter's course.
Because my thing is, the player I picked to win, Henna and Evelina are going to throw distance around left and right. But I think that when it comes to putting, she's just going to make up more strokes. I actually also put Paige Pierce in third.
Interesting.
Simply because if she's back, I like her here.
Yeah.
And I like that storyline.
I like the storyline. Yeah. I do, yeah.
I'm a big storyline guy. I like that.
Big storyline guy.
I put Haley King in second. Really like her at this event. Really like her at this course. But I'm picking big money Missy Gannon to take it down.
Missy is the one I struggled with the most because she was my consistent last year. And I really fought over third place. But, man, no Henna for you.
No Henna.
Not Henna. No, but no Holland.
No Holland.
Surprising one.
No Holland.
She looks very good.
Holland
looks very good.
I can't get Holland out of my 2 years ago. She was like a semi on fraud watch.
Well, you're still fed up after the OB angle gate from last year.
That's also true.
That's still bitter.
Yeah. Although I was Team Holland in that. Not that she didn't cheat. I just said she's the only person that knows if she cheated or not.
Yeah.
Is the hill I'm dying on.
Okay.
But let's go into the dark horse. I'll just roll with my dark horse. I'm taking one of the darkest of horses out there, Nico LaCastro.
Yeah, he. I
like him. Flex shots here.
I feel like Nico gets picked a lot on this segment. I feel like he doesn't win.
That's okay.
The dark horse pick.
That's okay.
I do like.
I nailed my top 3 for the other two, so if I lose the dark horse, it's okay.
I'm going ahead and I'm taking Gavin Babcock. He's still sitting outside the top 30. I feel like he's trying really hard. I feel like he's been training a lot, and I feel like he was really trending up last year. I don't think he's going to be outside the top 30 for long this year. And I'll probably pick him until he's inside the top 30. So
yeah, and the dark horse pick that Joe's submitting for this week is Joseph Anderson.
He was a rookie, wasn't he?
I believe he was last year.
Yeah.
So those are our picks. We'll see how they do. We'll update you next week on all of that. Actually, we'll update you next week on the points standing there. Or not next week. Next preview show.
Next
Waco.
preview show.
Few weeks from now.
Yeah.
But get out, watch some disc golf this weekend, whether it's on DGN or Joe Mez's new coverage that's including more than just lead card. Excited to see what that looks like.
Heck yeah.
And be sure to tune in Monday back to Grip Locked for the recap of everything that goes down at the Chess.com Invitational.